All right. It's 3 p.m. Eastern time in the Boston area. And then we come once again with the Assembly. It's a political talk show about happenings in Ghana. We are located out here in the diaspora, but we are deeply concerned about happenings in Ghana. And so we come to you every Saturday afternoon to discuss the major pertinent issues happening in our country. Today, we're going to talk about the issue of unemployment in Ghana. And recently, most of the political parties have outdoored their parties' manifestos. And jobs for the youth is one of the major campaign promises. So today, we are lucky to have key spokes individuals for the opposition National Democratic Congress, the NDC, to talk to us about the promises in terms of employment, especially digital jobs for the youth. I have in our midst Dr. Kofi Anoche, who is the NDC campaign spokesperson uh, for employment. I also have with me Mavis Lamisi, who is also the NDC's youth spokesperson for jobs as well. Um, I will properly introduce you guys once we all come on stage. And I have also Kofi Yeboah, who is a digital researcher based in Canada, and one of my usual panelists in the person of Dr. Neil Okine, who is an assistant professor of actuarial science at Appalachian State University in North Carolina. So, gentlemen and lady, you are welcome to the assembly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Agana.
Yes. All right. So, Lamisa, I'm going to begin with you. Unemployment is a problem in Ghana, especially among the young people. Now we see a lot of young people either engaging in lottery, right, which is betting, as a means of employment. But as the saying goes, the house will always win. Bet cannot be a means or a substitute for a job for anybody, right? Majority of the young people cannot get themselves out of poverty, or they cannot source their livelihood from staking bets every weekend when soccer games are going on. The young ones, the ladies, there's something called hookup these days. It has also become a means of livelihood for many of the young girls. It is prostitution that, to some extent, has been sanitized by the introduction of social media into the practice of prostitution, where they go online and meet their clients and have relabeled the age-old practice as hookup. Right. Again, this is as a result of the dire employment situation that the country is faced with. So the NDC is promising a major transformation in terms of youth and employment. So I would ask Lamisi Apeleba to sort of give us a general background of the unemployment situation in Ghana, and also more or less an overview of what the NDC is promising should they get the nod come election 2024.
Okay, thank you so much, Agana. Thank you, and thank you for giving us this platform to speak to your listeners, to our fellow Ghanaians, if I may say, in the diaspora. And then good evening to everybody. Good evening, Senior Comrade Dr. Anoche. Good evening to the panelists. So the NDC, yes, like you rightly said, has come up with this 2024 manifesto. And one of the burning or important topics when it comes to that manifesto is jobs, employment, unemployment. So yes, we as a party have come up with solutions to what we believe is a problem, a burning problem in this country, which is unemployment. But before we delve even deeper into the policy propositions of the NDC in our manifesto, I want us to, just like you said, talk about the issue of unemployment, or let me say the issues that pertains to employment in this country. So if you say unemployment in general and you pick it on face value, and we are solving the problem from that angle, I think it would be a bit problematic. Because in coming up with this 2024 manifesto, one thing that the NDC did in being able to develop good policies, being able to develop policies that would actually solve the problem and not just knee-jerk approaches to solving the problems like we've seen in the recent past or with this current government, the NDC had to go back to the table. We have to go back and ask ourselves what the problem is. And Senior Comrade Dr. Anoche is part of the very able subcommittee that sat and looked into the problem and then devised the solutions to this problem. So we went back and we realized that although we're saying unemployment as the data shows is currently at 14.7%, the problem of employment is not just unemployment. If you look at it like that, we say it's just 14.7% in general, and then we come up with solutions. We might be missing something. Because going back to our drawing books, going back to finding out what the problem is so that we can propose good solutions, we realize that it is not just about unemployment, it is about vulnerable employment as well. It would interest you to know that where unemployment currently lies at 14.7%, vulnerable employment, I'm very glad you actually mentioned the hookup and all. Vulnerable employment is currently around 68.5%, which is higher than the decent jobs or decent employment that we currently have under the employment bracket. So if you pick 11.9 million people that we believe are employed, and so we want to concentrate on the 14.7%, you realize that even amongst the 11.9 million people, we have over 8 million people who are vulnerably employed. And which is why I'm saying we will need to look at the problem. And that's what we did as a party before proposing the solutions. So it's not just the problem of unemployment when you pick employment, there's the issue of vulnerable employment as well. So again, coming up with the solutions to solve the problem, we realize that, okay, if it's unemployment and vulnerable employment, what are the root causes? Why do we have such high numbers when it comes to unemployment and then vulnerable employment? We realize that there are two things that are actually causing the problem. So we know the current government is touting and saying there's been a growth in the economy, there's been a growth in the economy. But the question is that if there's been a growth in the economy, why are we still complaining? Why are Ghanaians still complaining? Why are we saying there are no jobs? Why are we saying that we are suffering? And so we looked at it and then we realized that one of the issues that is contributing to the problem of unemployment and vulnerable employment is the fact that we have what we call the jobless growth. And so we have our people touting and saying there's been growth, but people have no jobs. So there's an issue of jobless growth in here. And the major cause of that would be that our growth is quite inconsistent. It's very low. And so we are not really seeing the impact of it when it comes to the creation of jobs. The second thing we realized too is the fact that when it comes to productivity, that's labor productivity, actually in Ghana now, the level of our productivity in terms of our labor force is low. It's very low. We don't even meet the average when it comes to the entire world or when it comes to the globe. And so this is also a contributor to the issue of unemployment and vulnerable employment. And let me just add, when we say labor productivity, it's not to buttress the points that some of our current government appointees have been making out there and saying that our people are lazy, the youth are lazy. No, that's not it. There are so many things that can contribute to low productivity. We need the right skill set, we need the right mindset, and we need the right tool set. And so if we don't have the right tool set, we don't have the right skill set, how are we able to be productive? Exactly. So when it comes to low productivity, it has nothing to do with people being lazy per se, but if we don't have the right skill set or we productivity. So unemployment, vulnerable employment, productivity, and then the jobless growth. Around the same problem, we also realized that there are so many other issues that are attached to it. So it then comes to the issue of inequity. So when you even pick gender, you
Okay, we're challenged here with technology.
High rate when it comes to women. Women have a yes.
Okay. So, Lamisi is breaking a little bit, and yes. So,
Yes, I believe my network is a challenge. Am I back?
Yes, you are back. Okay, so no, you're not back. But so let me let let me let Dr.
Like I was saying, when you pick the issue of unemployment.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
Yes. So when you pick the issue of unemployment and vulnerable employment, like I've just mentioned, and then you bring in the root causes of low labor productivity and jobless growth, there are other issues that come to play as well. Like I was saying, the issues of inequity. So when you bring up the issue of gender, you realize that even when it comes to unemployment, women are more unemployed. The unemployment rate amongst women is higher than men. When you come to PWDs, persons with disabilities, you realize that there's also an issue there. And then when you come to youth, you realize that the youth unemployment rate is actually high as well. And so we, as the NDC, looked at this problem, looked at the issues attached to it, and that is how we came up with the solutions or our policy proposals. We didn't just sit and then come up with the things that we are seeing, like we're seeing the current government do, when you ask why, because you've been in power and you ask the questions of why you're not doing this, we get no responses. The NDC went to the room, sat down as the social democratic party that we are, brought up policies to solve problems that we have identified. Okay, so we're going to zoom into the policies. And you will realize that whatever policy that we have actually introduced is to solve a problem. Okay, so let me just give a brief example. The NDC is saying that we're going to create the Women's Bank. And this Women's Bank is supposed to serve women-owned businesses. The question, I just talked about the inequity, the fact that when it comes to even gender, you realize that women are highly unemployed. Unemployment rate is higher amongst women than amongst men. And so we introduced the Women's Bank to help solve that problem. Okay, before we go in there, just so that we understand this, that's why I introduced the Women's Bank, for us to understand what I mean by we've introduced policies to solve the issues we noticed whilst we were trying to prepare our manifesto. So first and foremost, we devised an approach to solving the problem of unemployment. And the first thing that we wanted to do is that we didn't want to introduce policies that would fail. And so we need to provide a grounding for these policies. We need to ensure that the environment is prepared and ready for these policies. And so we're saying that we would want to modernize the legal and institutional environment to ensure that every policy that we are bringing about would survive. It would not even fail before we even start implementing them. And so we're saying that we are accelerating the implementation of the GLMIS, which is the Ghana Labor Market Information System. So this is a platform that is supposed to work to provide us with data, all data sources for the number of unemployed people we have, the number of employed people we have, data in relation to statistics. It's supposed to do some other things like provide us with the jobs available for people who are unemployed to be able to access that online and be able to link people to jobs. Currently, this government is implementing that, but are they implementing it right? The last we checked, when there was a marking on how well the GLMIS is being implemented. As of last year, I think the rate was that we were below average. We were performing poorly, I think. For now, well, I visited the platform even before coming onto this conversation or engagement. I realized that some things have been done, but it has not been done to its entirety. And so what we want to do is that when we come up, in order to create the right environment for our policies to survive, for implementation to go on well, for something like the GLMIS, we put it to better use, we create it, would ensure that we promote it in such a way that we'll be able to put in all the things that it's supposed to do, like linking people to jobs, like providing the right statistics. As it stands now, the statistics that we have there, the GSS has released statistics, the Ghana Statistical Service has released some statistics, but it's still not on the GLMIS. They are still using the data of 2021, whereas we have some data from 2023. So we would have to do it and do it right. And there are so many other things like the Employment Act. We are promising a 24-hour economy. And so we'll need to review some of these acts to ensure that the environment is ready for the 24-hour economy policy that we are bringing and all the other policies that we are bringing. We want to ratify the ILO Convention 158. We want to do a whole lot of things to ensure that we modernize the legal and institutional environment for our policies to thrive. The next thing is Aspire 24. And here we're saying that, like I spoke about the low labor productivity, we would need to ensure that we provide the right skill sets, the right mindsets, and the right tool sets. And so Aspire 2024 is an answer to that problem, or is a solution to that problem. So here we will need to provide training. We need to ensure that we let people understand the need to be productive. And so we would roll out a campaign to work on the mindsets of people, and a promise like the National Apprenticeship Program. So the National Apprenticeship Program, where we are saying that we are we are ensuring that our young ones, the youth especially, I'll speak for the youth because I am a youth myself, will be trained in TVET, will be trained so that we can also give them some capital to go about and then set up their businesses. And so here we are equipping them with the right skill set. We would give them some capital for them to be able to get the right tools to work with. So something like the National Apprenticeship Program we're promising is an answer to this. The 1 Million Coders Program. So Dr. Anochi will speak to the digital bit, but I'm just introducing this so that you understand that we did not come up with our policies in an abstract. They are to solve problems. So 1 Million Coders Program is also to provide skills.
Yeah. So, okay, but
it's also to provide skills. So
I wanted to comment on something that you mentioned, because I have a lot of friends in Ghana who are entrepreneurs, and they say one of their challenges is really getting people committed to the job, having the right work ethic. And they look, it's a big complaint among the entrepreneurs who I know that they are not able to keep employees because they just don't come with the right set of work ethic. So I don't know if there's anything within this plan to maybe, I mean, you mentioned there will be some campaign, but how about tackling the educational system, maybe introducing things like internship in our universities where, you know, you would imbue students with that, you know, general productive work ethic, where when they go into the work of world, entrepreneurs are not going to be disappointed with what they are receiving from the universities. I don't know if there's anything along those lines, but it's an important thing.
So the campaign, yes, that's well noted. That's well noted. So the campaign is not just about we going around and then sensitizing people. All that you mentioned can also be included in the campaign. So we can even start from our schools before we even take it to the workplaces. So yes, that is well noted. You see, that is why it's even good for us to have some of these progressive conversations. And so in our implementation, we can break some of these things up. So yes, the campaign can also include the education. We can go in, try and then roll out certain things that will sort these issues out, even from our schools, before we get into the workplace. Okay, so that would be for the Aspire 24, where we get to influence the mindset, we get to provide our people with the right skill set and the right tool set. Then we move on to funding. So here we're looking at creating a national employment trust. And this national employment trust will provide funding for most of the policies that we are proposing. Okay, so there's a reason why we actually creating a trust, or we think we should create a trust, because as it stands now, we realize that even with this current government, most of our people have lost hope. We believe there's been a lot of corruption here and there. But when we say a trust, you know what the trust comes with. It comes with that fiduciary responsibility, a duty of care responsibility. It's backed by law. And so it's not just about maybe we're implementing a program, so we're just giving this money and then later we can't account for it. It's in a trust, it's backed by law. The law will guide how it is even taken out, how it's accounted for, and all that. So through the National Employment Trust, we'll be able to provide for something like our Ejumariwa program, the $50 million FinTech Growth Fund that we are speaking to. So all our policies are linked to something. And so when it comes to funding, Ejumariwa program, the $50 million FinTech Fund, all this will find its place in there. The next point will be the level up. So I spoke about the inequities. So I spoke about the fact that when it comes to even youth, the numbers of unemployment when it comes to youth is higher than the general number of unemployment. When it comes to women, when it comes to PWD, And so we are introducing solutions to that problem as well. So one of which would be the Women's Bank, like I mentioned. The Women's Bank will speak to the issues of women, high rates of unemployment among our women. We're introducing farm banks, we're introducing digital literacy for informal sector. So to work on some of these inequities that we have. The last thing that I will speak to so that we can move on would be the monitoring evaluation. In doing all this, we would ensure we have created the right environment, we have provided funding, we have rolled out policies to work on the inequities and all. Now we know one of the things that lacks a lot in our country currently is, like I said, there's no monitoring, there's no evaluation, nobody accounts for anything. We don't know what's happening. The next moment we are hearing that 2.3 million jobs have been created. There's no proper accounting to even show us how many of these jobs have been created, how they were created and all that. And so we're saying that we will need to develop a way of monitoring and evaluating whatever we have done. Even the GLMIS is a way of doing that. Because if the GLMIS is providing us with timeless data, with timed data, we would be able to tell what is going on, the numbers. Are we moving up? Are we going down? And then we can introduce so many other things to also evaluate and monitor. If we introduce a particular secretariat to ensure that we monitor our activities, the implementation.
Okay. Well, okay. So I'll introduce Dr. Anochi into the conversation.
Hello?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You cut off for a little bit.
Network keeps going on and off.
Yes.
Yes.
So
I think this is the premise on which we. Yes.
Okay. So
this is the premise on which we actually thought about our solutions. Yes, exactly. And so if we're introducing the 24-hour economy, we're saying that the 24-hour economy is supposed to help us provide jobs for our people. And we will need the right environment to do that. We will need the right legal environment and institutional environment to do that. So our promises around that to ensure that the 24-hour economy policy thrives. Like we already know, the formula for the 24-hour economy is our very known formula 133, which is the same job, 3 people, 3 shifts, where like you are in the US now, you know how it's done there. 8-hour shift is not enough. So we do 3 8 hours in a day to ensure lots of people are working. Our promises would ensure that the right environment is provided for the 24-hour economy to work. So that's an example of that. I've already spoken about the Women's Development Bank. So Dr. Anochi will speak to the digital bit. So this is how the NDC came about our promises and to solve the issue of unemployment, like I have discussed.
Okay. Well, maybe thanks a lot. I like the fact that you introduced the problem and the fact that you guys, did the groundwork in trying to really get to the root of the problem, and then link your solutions to what you discovered on the ground, right? Rather than engaging in some sort of superficial policy endeavor. So Dr. Anochi is a former CEO of the Ghana Pensions Authority, and he's currently one of the spokespersons for the manifesto's employment promises, right? So one of the major promises of the NDC going into this election is digital jobs. The digital economy has grown over the years. We are here on a platform that couldn't have taken place, let's say, 10 years ago. And this is testament to the fact that the digital space has become a source of life of its own. And so the NDC hopes to leverage that to generate employment for the youth. So I'll introduce Dr. Anochi into the conversation to tell us what exactly the NDC plans to achieve with this promise of digital employment, right? And yes, and in the process of delivering your comments, I would interject with certain questions based on what you guys put out in the manifesto.
Okay, that's fine. Actually, you would agree with me that the world has changed, and like Lamisi said, we need to, on the Aspire 24, we are looking at workforce productivity and enterprise competitiveness. So for enterprise competitiveness, the enterprise cannot be competitive without the use of technology. So we asking for the youth employment goal. One of the youth employment goals is to train 1 million coders, the 1 million coders program. And that is not in isolation, is to make sure that enterprise becomes competitive. So the 1 million coders would run into assisting various critical sectors such as health, such as creative arts and tourism, such as fintech, textile, small-scale mining. So if you look at that, you realize that in agribusiness, we have to integrate Internet of Things. We have to integrate AI and digital platforms for farming, marketing, modernizing the farming market practices. So in agribusiness, you're going to have the need to have data analysts who process and analyze agricultural data, Internet of Things specialists to design and implement IoT systems for monitoring agriculture environments. We need AI developers as well to create applications for automating irrigation process and decision making, and then supply chain managers who would use blockchain technology, and robotics technicians. So in agribusiness alone, we're going to create all these types of digital jobs. If you come to manufacturing as well, you need automation technicians to install, maintain, and repair automated systems in manufacturing plants. Robotics engineering to design and build and maintain robots for automated production lines. And then you also need AI specialists as well to develop algorithms for that. And you need supply chain managers as well. In the fintech environment, you need blockchain developed to design decentralized applications that would make sure that the system is more secure. As cybersecurity experts will also be needed in that field. So you realize that we intend to also create about 300,000 digital jobs, and they would come. We are not creating them in vacuum. We are creating them to add value to enterprise. So once we go into after fintech, we have fabrication. We need precision, and most of our problems we have is that you get all those metallurgy, those dealing in metals and fabrications. Precision is a problem. So the job is done, but you realize that there's the finishing needs some type of precision, and precision comes with a lot of technology. So we also need what we call CNC operators that will make sure that there's improvement in precision, the cutting, and then the molding. We also need safety engineers in that, and we also need coders. So the coders are going to specialize in areas that matter to us. And like I said, in health, in fintech, in tourism, and that. Textiles is also one important area that we want to digitalize. We would use blockchain technology, and then we would also need textile technology, digital designers, because now design has moved away from the traditional way of designing textiles. So we need a lot of textile digital designers to do that. Same as coders for the textile industry. So the coders will have to specialize in the areas that we need enterprise efficiency and enterprise competitiveness, so that we'll be able to export more. Because without the precision and without technology, our standards in meeting international standards is what has for a lot of time not helped us to be able to meet the specifications needed in the export market. When it comes to small scale mining as well, we need same IoT coders, we need AI, we need environmental engineers to design systems that minimize environmental impact. We need also IoT technicians to install IoT devices that monitor environmental factors and optimize mining practices. And then geographic information systems for precise mapping of the areas, so that we just don't go just trying, it's like try a luck. You dig, you don't find anything, then you spoil the environment, and then you have to dig somewhere else. So this will be precision mining for the small scale miners. In tourism, virtual reality is one thing we need to look at, and that will also be driven by AI, so that people can, those in the diaspora can experience what, when they come on the ground, they'll be able to, see. So what you see is what you're going to get. So we need a lot of virtual reality in our content, tourism content. So you need VR content creators. So we need that as part of our digital jobs. We need digital marketers as well. We also need coders for the tourism industry. So like I said, the 1 million coders are not just going to be just coders for nothing, but coders that are going to improve the competitiveness of our enterprise. So basically, yes, so basically that is what it is. We need to make, and then the youth, that is the new thing for them. I have a daughter who works in the US, but he's home, and he's a special assistant, and he works with an equity fund, an equity firm, but he's home. So once they get the tools and they understand that employment need not be physical in Ghana, need not be going to work and sit at a desk, but the global world becomes your marketplace. So basically, that is what we intend to do.
Okay. So, but in terms of, you talked about the many areas of employment that might benefit from people with the knowledge for the digital economy. But how do you hope to train these individuals, so to speak, right? So you talk about the number of coders that the trip. What's the number of coders? The 1 million coders, right? 1 million coders.
Yeah.
So how do you hope to achieve this? Is it going to be through the major universities, or are they going to be vocational institutions that are going to be purposefully set up for this effort? Or how do you intend to train the youth on these skills?
Yeah, we're going to create digital zonal Ghana digital centers, and we're going to create digital innovation hubs as well. So it's not going to be so much centralized. So the digital centers will be equipped to undertake that training. The good thing too is that for the youth in the diaspora who may already have that skill set, they can also help in the training, because the training can be done remotely. So we're going to create a lot of digital centers across the country on regional basis, and then people will be able to do that. And we're also going to create digital innovation hubs as well. So that is the method we're going to use to train the coders.
Okay, all right. So let me bring Kofi in here, and perhaps he can also help direct the conversation. Kofi, I'm going to read your Facebook post that you put up when the NDC and the MPP came out with their party manifestos. I mean, you've been in this space for a very long time. You work professionally in this field. Though you are here in your personal capacity, but not in the capacity of who you work for. You're here out of your love for Ghana. And so, yeah, so we're going to take your views as solely yours and not associated with who you work with. Now, you said just glance through the digital economy section of the manifesto of both the MPP and NDC. Both provided cosmetic initiatives not well grounded on research and needed and need assessment, right? So again, we have the individuals who worked extensively on the NDC's digital economy and youth employment here. I want you to expand on this view, and perhaps they can answer your question in terms of the depth of what the NDC has put up.
Thank you again. I'm laughing because if I knew you're going to read this post, I would have edited it. But thanks, and also thanks to the two panelists earlier who shared their views. The reason for me saying that is because, and this is not just NDC, but also cuts across, and not just political parties in Ghana, but also cuts across Africa. Oftentimes, what I have realized is that we don't have a very clear strategic pathway for countries on what digital, on our position around digital economy. What do I mean by that? If you look at the US and China now, there is a clear strategic path for their digital economy in the sense that they are focused on product and innovation. And so you can see a lot of the tech companies coming out of these two countries, and they are known for that. If you go to the EU, they are known for governance and regulatory frameworks and policies, right? This is where a lot of the revenues are coming in for them, right? Because, for instance, you have the OpenAI, all the big tech companies, majority are in the US, bringing in a chunk of revenue. China has also their big five bringing a chunk of revenue, including talent as well for both countries. The EU gains a lot through finding in terms of developing policies that, it's not intentional that way, but what they have carved a niche for themselves is that you can't come to our region and do whatever you like. If you do, this is a fine, and the fines are heavy in billions of dollars, in billions of euros. And that is a form of revenue for them. If you come to Africa, we do patches of digital economy strategic positioning, and that's my biggest problem. So if you look at NPP's current manifesto, if you look at NDC's current manifesto, there are great initiatives, just as it's been outlined. I don't have too much of, for lack of better words, negativity towards the initiatives. I think they're really great. Of course, we can poke holes in it and all that just to strengthen it for that purposes. But what is the bigger picture we are looking at? Okay. If you go to India, India is known for high-skilled talent that can be exported. That's number one, or bring in tech businesses, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what Ghana wants to do? Taiwan does the same. All the conversations around AI that's happening currently, even around the manufacturing of AI chips and all that, it's being done in Taiwan. They have high-skilled manufacturing talent that does that, and so brings in import revenue from the US particularly, right? What is Ghana's position on that? Are we going to say Ghana would be known for high-skilled tech talent that will bring in, for instance, more businesses? Because right now, and this is the interesting part, which I think it should be the part that we should look at least, because Ghana is actually in Africa the largest country that brings in digital trade exportation currently, and even South Africa doesn't compete with us. And
say that again, digital what?
Digital trade exportation.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is in the area of BPOs. And I'm sure, Dr. Kofi Anokye is aware of this. There are a lot of BPO centers, well, not a lot, that's an exaggeration, but there are quite a number of BPO centers in Ghana. And one just because of also our ability to speak and understand English. So it helps us to be able to do this kind of digital kind of small, basic digital kind of work for companies outside of Ghana. Right, so this includes customer service, this includes troubleshooting for just basic tech kind of stuff, right? And we lead in that area. So how are these two manifestos leveraging on this to say, you know what, we want Ghana to be known for that, right? And Kenya is competing in that area, and that's my biggest. That's the focus of why I made that comment. Yeah.
Okay. So you said if you had the opportunity, you'd have edited it. Which part of it would you have edited?
I would have edited it because I think I don't have to underestimate the effort that both parties invested in terms of the effort, research. I know that they did, even though it's cosmetic, in my view, cosmetic, just as I've explained, but the effort they put into it has to be acknowledged. Yeah.
Okay. So your position is that we haven't defined the long-term trend, right? Where we want to arrive at in the long term with respect to engaging with the digital economy. And then you also mentioned sort of being able to attract business by virtue of having the talent at home. In fact, and this is how China became one of the huge players in global manufacturing, right? Because they had, now some business people will tell you that they don't go to China because of cheap labor now, but they go there because of the skilled labor that exists for various types of manufacturing, right? They have the guys who are able to fix machineries and, you know, do the basic stuff as it relates to manufacturing. And so they go there because of the skill. So I don't know if it's something that Dr. Anochie, you guys considered in terms of the overall long-term ambition of the NDC's interest in engaging with the growing digital economy.
Yeah, of course. If you look at, like Kofi said, we need to develop the talent to attract. So what we're doing with the 1 million coders that will create about 300,000 digital jobs is to create the talent. Once you have the pool of talent, then you're going to get the attraction. Another initiative, like Kofi said, another based on the multilingual lingual situation, that some people can't even speak English, and that we have another initiative in the Aspire 24 on multilingual, making sure that the youth also are multilingual in areas that would help us in our talent pool. So they'll also be trained in the Chinese language and other languages that are not necessarily English and French, but in other languages that they'll be able to communicate, and with the talent that they have in coding and machine learning and all that, they'll be able to attract jobs from almost every part of the world. So the multilingual initiative too is also another way of making sure that the talent that we're going to create to attract, because when you have, like Kofi said, when we have the talent, you'll be able to attract the businesses. So we need to make sure that when the mind share, when people are thinking about digital jobs, they think about Ghana. So basically, that is what we intend to do, to place Ghana in the mind share of people that will look at Ghana for digital jobs.
Okay. So, well, I have Dr. Nee Okine here. He's an assistant professor in actuarial science. He engages with young people. I mean, I guess your field is also a field that engages with the digital economy. I don't know if you have any input, or maybe perhaps you have a question for, I mean, you are one of my usual panelists, so you may as well be a co-host today. So if you have any questions for either Lamisi, Dr. Anochie, or Kofi, but I'll come back to Dr. Anochie after you have contributed.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to meet you, Lamisi, Doc, Kofi. I just have a couple of questions, and the first one is, the numbers. You mentioned 1 million coders, but the jobs was just 300,000, and I like numbers, so I wanted to know what's the correlation. Why are you creating 1 million coders, and then the job is just 300,000? Maybe I'm missing something. If you can touch on that before I go through my other questions.
Okay. There's a difference between creating 1 million coders and then creating 300,000 jobs internally. Because when you have the talent pool of 1 million coders, then it means that you are creating, like Kofi said, you are creating the talent that can attract jobs outside Ghana. So the 300,000 digital jobs we're talking about is when I spoke about the type of jobs in the different critical industries, like manufacturing, health, tourism, the creative arts, textiles. Yeah, those typical critical areas. So those critical areas will attract all those type of digital jobs. But once you have the pool of coders, then that pool of coders can also, literally, let me use the word, can also be exported. So that talent will be available for them to take up jobs in other gig jobs that we have around the world.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. That's fine. For me, with all this AI blockchain technologies you mentioned earlier on, my problem with some of this topics is they all sound good on paper, but we know with the Ghanaian politician, I feel most of them are only interested in the procurement gigs that comes with some of these new technologies and the new ideas. We've seen what the MPP have done with the Galamsey. They said they've bought drones to do whatever they want to do. They bought the drones and nothing happened, right? So that's some of my worry with some of this, shiny new technologies or words that people throw around. So if you can speak to that it wouldn't just be another opportunity for NDC to just be like NPP. That would be great.
Yeah, but Doc, you can't use MPP as a yardstick.
I know, but it's sad. Sometimes we just have to. I just want to hear what you have to say, but I don't want NDC to win because of all this AI thing. I just want NDC to win so that they hold NPP accountable. But also we have to hold you guys accountable, or we have to hold the NDC accountable if they win. So I just want to hear your opinion on what are some of the things you guys will put in place to make sure some of these ideas don't just turn into a vehicle where politicians who just used to create and use.
I mean, if I want to respond to that, like I said earlier, if you're going to use MPP as a yardstick, then you are starting below average, below the belt, because they are not a yardstick. So if you want to use a yardstick, you have to look at what NDC did before MPP came in. So it's still a continuation of building. So if you're going to use yardstick, use NDC yardstick and NDC. But if you use MPP, then it's below average. So you cannot use MPP. What MPP have done, like you said, is about procurement. It's about, they said they've done digitalization, but that is a no starter for us. So use what NDC did before NDC lost power, and look at whether when NDC comes into power, we're going to build on what we've already done. And we've always met. Our word has always been whatever we want to do. So we mean what we want to do. So use NDC, not MPP NDC.
Okay, that's a fair point, Doc. Again, the last one.
Yes.
And one of the important aspects we've not spoken about here, we're talking about all this Internet of Things, all this coding stuff, is internet prices. I want to know what would be the NDC's position on reduction of data prices, because now internet is becoming just like food. It's needed by everybody.
Yes,
right?
Become a basic necessity, sort of,
yes,
right?
Yes, a basic necessity.
Yeah.
In addition to having cheap internet, what's the NDC's position on having great internet connectivity, right? Because recently we heard what happened to the 5G. MPP gave that contract to a company, and all other companies has to go through that company. So it's interesting how when it comes to some of these things, the politicians want to hijack and just create money for the world for themselves. So I want to know what's the NDC's position on data prices, increasing access to internet, so that we can all work. As you mentioned, the office doesn't have to be a physical space. We can work from different places, and I know the connectivity in Ghana is not the best. So how can we improve on that?
Yes, I think let me start again that still don't continue using MPP as a yardstick. You see, it's if you look at NDC started the fiber optics infrastructure. NDC started building the infrastructure, and MPP came in, and they've just leveraging on the infrastructure and doing digitization and not even doing it properly. So that's why we said we're going to open up with digital centers and the innovation hubs. And we're going to build onto the infrastructure, because the infrastructure, like you said, is key. And NDC is noted to building infrastructure. And we were building it till the MPP came into power. So obviously, you cannot build, like you said, you cannot build the digital jobs without enhancing and building on infrastructure. And NDC is noted for building on infrastructure. So obviously, we're going to continue from where we left off. So that's why I keep on saying we shouldn't use MPP as a yardstick.
Yeah,
we're going to continue from where we left off.
Yeah, it's one detail that I can testify to in the manifesto, where there's sort of a significant input in terms of, really putting together the required infrastructure to make unleash the so-called digital economy. So yeah, if you peruse the NDC's manifestos properly, you're going to find out that they have really focused on building significant network that might improve connectivity and perhaps also introduce competition into the market, whereby internet prices might go down, right? Yes, Kofi, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to. Sorry.
Yeah, so Kofi Yeboah, right? Yeah, not
okay.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to mention that there's one key thing that we often miss when we talk about internet infrastructure in Ghana and across Africa, is that it's not just only the government that invests in it. If you look at the current trends now, you have a lot of the US-based tech companies and other Chinese-based tech companies investing a lot in the infrastructure than the current government is doing. And it's not just Ghana. And so you have the Google doing the to Africa, you have Facebook and other groups also investing a lot across the coast. And the reason I mentioned that is because it also affects the pricing. These companies monopolize, for lack of better words, the internet connectivity. And so what happens is that they invest in the in internet infrastructure construction along communities that they have the disposable income to be able to afford it, right? And afford here is not just the cheap side of it. It's just that these communities have that income, middle class, upper middle class, that they can afford. They don't go to the rural communities. They won't invest and do that, right? And so now it's a very tricky one, because now they partner directly with government. So the construction and investment looks like it's the government that is doing it, but it's not.
Okay.
Right? It's either they are investing, like, let's say 80%, and government is coming in with 20%.
Yeah.
But so that's the tricky part, where the pricing is always. So my question to both parties, and in this case NDC, is that in your manifesto, you should be able to tell us that in your partnerships with these big tech companies, you are going to be able to represent the interest of Ghanaians, and not just people who can afford, but people who also cannot afford some of these services, and you can be able to protect citizens. We often don't get that. It's not just the NDC. If you look at the NPP manifesto, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. And Kofi, you introduced a very good point. I don't know if Dr. Notch is with us, but perhaps
internet infrastructure problems.
Okay. So yeah, Kofi introduced the partnership that is happening between sort of the private sector and governments in putting up infrastructure. And we normally get the short end of the stick by our governments not negotiating properly with these giant corporations, right? And I mean, there's a huge opinion out there that in Ghana, basically the major internet providers are fleecing Ghanaians and just robbing them, because our governments have failed to negotiate fair deals for the ordinary person. So what is the NDC doing in that regard? But also, maybe Lamisi might have input here, since you are an international relations person, because again, when it comes to the digital economy, we are dealing with governments across the world. There's issues of national security. For instance, in the US and Canada, they became increasingly concerned about what's in the social media platform, TikTok, right?
TikTok.
And some of the security concerns that have arisen. We are consuming these products without any concern of the sort. Also, there's been allegations that, for instance, the AU headquarters was backed by the Chinese, who had supplied them with technology. So again, I'm thinking about this whole thing holistically. Are we putting in place measures across the board in every aspect of our life to either deal with issues of security, but also have fair negotiations across the board? Again, another thing is with respect to content creators. My understanding is that some content creators are not getting as much paid as others in other parts of the world, but their content is creating money for these platforms. But based on the historical fact that Africans have always been, marginalized in so many dimensions, even in the modern era where we think that we live in a global village where everybody can get on this digital platform and it literally becomes a global village, still that marginalization is going on. So in terms of this grand promise, what is the NDC doing in terms of the cross-country negotiations that would give us a fair deal in all these areas? So I don't know if there's something that you guys considered, but if you did, you can if you can respond, or let me see. Yeah.
Well, just a brief. You just said Africa. So Africa, Ghana is just a subset of Africa. We don't have our platform. If you take, like you rightfully said, all those TikToks and it's by the Chinese, you have Instagram and all that. So if Africa wants to leapfrog or be part of plugging into the digital world, we must also have our own platform.
No,
so,
I mean, the way I want you to look at it,
I would disagree with that.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that, right? How do we negotiate with these giant corporations in terms of how they treat our content creators? Do they get a fair deal? Do they create content for these guys to make money and they don't get paid as much because their governments are not negotiating on their behalf? So that's what I'm looking at right now. That what is our government doing in terms of their relations with the corporations or the companies that are providing these platforms? Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like I was trying to say, in the short term, obviously, like you've virtually answered it, right? But obviously, we need to do better negotiation. But I'm saying that in the long term, because what are we talking about negotiation? We are talking about negotiations because those platforms do not belong to us. So the content is determined by them. So yes, of course, in the short term, we need to do a lot of negotiations, because if we're going to go make it big in the digital platform and create digital jobs, then we have to do a lot of negotiations. So that I agree. But in the long term, we must be able to have our own platform that is attractive enough for them to want to come in.
Okay, right. I mean, my issue is, like, for instance, let's take YouTube, for instance, say a giant platform. We are on YouTube right now. We are on Facebook. And if you're a content creator in Ghana who wants to make money, you have to be able to get on these platforms. But if these platforms are not paying, then we are literally creating content for them to put advertisement on, make money for themselves, but our content creators are not getting paid. I've heard of situations where guys in Ghana are creating content, but they have to have their friends outside their country, right? Create accounts for them, and they send their videos to them and they upload, right? But what we miss in that process also is the tax revenue that could potentially come about. So there's a guy sitting in Ghana, he creates a content, sends it to his friend in the UK, he posts it. When the money comes, they take tax out of it. You understand? So it's so again, I think that as part of the trying to unleash this digital economy, content creation is one of the huge aspects. Look, a lot of guys have literally made careers out of this, have become wealthy as a result of this, right? It's taking them out of poverty.
Digital entrepreneurs, that's what we call them. Yeah.
But again, that's an area that I think we need to look at.
Yeah.
I don't know if she has any input in that regard, but yeah.
Well, I believe Dr. Anochie has actually spoken to that when he says that we need to do better. So from starting points, like he says, we need to have our own hosting platforms. So yes, looking at that, obviously, I'll also add on to that to say we will do better. And this is not me being political, but me saying that the NDC, let's not forget, is a social democratic party, and we are always for the people. And so when it comes to these negotiations and other stuff, we will definitely have the people at heart. So yes, we'll consider this when it comes to negotiations and all that. And it's very good that we're having some of these conversations and some of these points coming up. And so when we retire to implementation, when we get to the implementation stage, we'll consider some of these pointers and all that. Obviously, we'll do better. And that's what I would have to say about this.
Okay. So, but with Kofi being an expert, I don't know if he has any directions for our NDC folks here.
I'm not an expert, but yeah, I understand what he's saying. And that's really a nice way to put it, Agana, so that I don't know what I realized I was going to bash, but no. Instead, I think there is a pathway to it, and I agree to some extent with what Dr. Kofi Anochie is saying, that we should be able to build in the long term, right? We should be able to build our own platforms, which is kind of difficult to do looking at the current trends of geopolitics that affect, all these things, right? But the ideal thing is that if we had our own platforms, this would have been easier. The reality is that we don't have them, right? So what lessons can we learn from other regions that don't have the platforms, but are able to negotiate fairly for their citizens? If you look at the EU, they are very protective of digital workers in their country. And regardless of whether that platform belongs to, is developed within the EU region or not, the rules are the rules. The regulations are the regulations. If you fail, for instance, if you fail to underpay, if you fail to pay fairly digital workers, there's a fine. If your platform discriminates in terms of payment or wages towards EU citizens, you will pay a fine. These are really defined, and so even American-based tech companies find it difficult, or not even find it difficult, but they are really scared of violating those rules. If you come to our part of the country, of the region, where, and some of the examples you cited, Agana, in Kenya, there were issues of folks who were working with Sama, a tech company that was doing data labeling. And these data workers, right, were underpaid. And they had to go through lawsuits to be able to, and they're still actually going through lawsuits to get fair wages. This should not happen, right? What are the rules that protect our workers? We cannot prevent tech companies from coming and investing in our country. In fact, we need them. That is true. We really need them. But how are we preparing the environment to protect our citizens? I think that is really key. And oftentimes, most of the times, we miss it. But so that is one of the gaps that I think needs to be looked at. What are the regulatory policies? The existing ones, are we going to revise them or not? Right? Because oftentimes, workers and users are disadvantaged.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
so let me try to respond to add to what Kofi said. Actually, because of that, we're bringing up an Employment Act, which is going to take care of those peculiarities that Kofi spoke about. So the Employment Act is going to take care of both labor issues dealing with the 24-hour economy and then digital jobs. So the Labor Act would address most of these issues, like the issue that happened in Kenya.
Okay. All right. So, well, I promised to keep you guys here for roughly an hour. We are a little over an hour, and I think it's time to draw the curtains. I mean, if you have any maybe concluding comments, you're welcome. Otherwise, I would say let's end it here today, and hopefully we can engage in this conversation another time, right? There's so many questions that remain to be answered. hopefully we have also given you through this conversation some input to really think through again as
exactly.
I mean, a policy it never ends, right? The policy making process is a cycle. It evolves.
Yeah.
So you have conversations, you polish it up, and then even after you have implemented the policy process still continues to revolve, right?
Again, I have one question for them before they go.
Okay.
How do the NDC as a party feel about the Provision 8? You know, for me, I don't know. Are you guys happy about it? I mean, if you're not happy, maybe I know you cannot say it on air, but what's the feeling about the 8th position?
God is great.
Okay.
8 is a great position. And you see, currently if you're in Ghana, you would know what it feels like for the people to want a change in government. It doesn't really matter wherever we find ourselves. If the people want a change will happen. So yes, we love the 8. We are happy with 8. People will certainly find the 8 on the sheet, and we will come to power come December 7th. God is the great. 8 for the MPP is enough. And we will break the 8.
The next 8 years is for the NDC.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah, so I have some concluding statements or comments. I'll say that in the area of international relations, especially from the youth wing, one of the things that we have realized is that usually
wow.
I guess that's our concluding statement.
Now, recently, when we travel outside, recently our director traveled outside and formation gathered.
Okay, come start again. Oh, she's getting a call. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, yes, you're on. Yes, internet challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, yeah, so we have a challenge there. Again, this is the reason for this conversation today. We want that should the NDC get the nod, everything is going to be smooth.
We improve the infrastructure.
Yeah. Anyway, so well, Dr. Noche, thanks a lot for coming. Again, as I said, we have a lot of questions. In fact, I had questions with respect to how the NDC wishes to engage the diaspora in all of this.
Yeah,
a lot of people, young people, leave the country. Most of us, in fact, left with the intention of coming back home. For instance, when I was leaving Ghana, I didn't think I was going to stay for long, right?
You can digitally come back.
No, I mean, yes. So, but I'm building the point here that, but now, as we said, we live in a highly interconnected world whereby people who live in the diaspora can contribute as much as those who are back home. And so I think it's important that our governments take advantage of the extreme talent that, are still very loyal and patriotic to their countries, but live in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Most of us here, when we wake up, every decision that we make, we don't make that decision without thinking about Ghana. Even it doesn't matter how long you live here. So it's very important that our country leverages all that talent that has left the country, have made themselves better, right, in developing the country. So I don't know if there's a dimension of the NDC's manifesto that tries to draw that connection. But as I said, the policy-making process is continuous, and I think it's something that the party needs to take into consideration.
Okay.
Right. No. All right. But we hope to have you again, and then
definitely.
Yes. All right. So Kofi, thanks a lot for joining us.
You too. Thank you.
Nice meeting everyone too.
Really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Yes.